I used to wake up to the sound of his laughter. It was a rich, warm sound that seemed to chase away the shadows in the corners of our bedroom, a sound that made the world feel entirely and unshakably safe. 10 years ago, Joe was my everything. He was the man who held the universe together with nothing but a smile and the strength of his arms. But stability is a silent, insidious thing. You don't notice the foundation is cracking until the floor drops out from under you entirely, leaving you suspended in a terrifying freefall. When Joe resigned from his firm because they absolutely refused to see his value, passing him over for a promotion he had bled for, dismissing his countless hours of unpaid overtime, our supposedly happy marriage didn't just crack. It shattered, sending microscopic splinters into every corner of our daily lives. Suddenly, the man who was my rock, my impenetrable fortress, was just a man sitting quietly on the sofa. The silence in the house grew deafening. Without the structure of his demanding career, Joe seemed to shrink into himself. I started noticing every tiny imperfection, magnifying them until they obscured the man I loved. I noticed the specific, irritating way he chewed his cereal, the maddening way he left his worn sneakers haphazardly by the front door, and especially his infuriating habit of falling utterly silent whenever I tried to start an argument. To my increasingly frustrated mind, his silence was profound laziness and a total lack of ambition. I thought he was giving up, but to him, as I would later learn with soul-crushing regret, it was survival. He was trying to keep the peace, absorbing my toxic energy to prevent the house from burning down. As the months dragged on, our savings dwindled with terrifying speed. Every bill in the mail felt like a personal insult, a glaring reminder of his failure. My resentment grew like a dark, suffocating ivy, wrapping around my heart and choking out the affection I once held for him. At the office, however, the world was completely different. I worked at a high-end corporate firm, surrounded by high performers, aggressive ambition, and suits that cost more than our monthly mortgage. It was there, amidst the intoxicating aroma of espresso and expensive cologne, that I met Marcus. Marcus was a senior analyst. He was sharp, impeccably groomed, and exuded an aura of unbothered success. Every time he walked into a room, he commanded it. I started looking at him and imagining a different life, a life where I wasn't the only one carrying the crushing, suffocating weight of our financial ruin. My dangerous, escapist imagination quickly morphed into reality when Marcus started lingering at my desk. He would lean casually against the partition, his interest in me as blindingly clear as the flawless diamonds encrusted on his heavy silver watch. He offered me compliments that I drank like a person dying of thirst in the desert. He made me feel seen, valued, and above all, secure. Joe, despite his depression, noticed me drifting. He wasn't blind. He tried to reach out. In the dead of night, he would hesitantly drape an arm over my waist, trying to hold me, trying to bridge the ever-widening chasm between us. But I always turned away. I pulled the blankets tightly around my shoulders, citing exhaustion from my demanding job. I retreated into the cold, artificial glow of my smartphone, scrolling through endless feeds of people living perfect lives, while he eventually gave up and retreated into the dim, cold confines of his basement man cave. He spent hours down there, supposedly gaming to pass the agonizing time. We were no longer partners navigating the stormy seas of life. We were two strangers, mere roommates silently sharing the hollow ghost of a once beautiful life. The absolute turning point, the moment that irrevocably altered the trajectory of my existence, happened on a brisk Tuesday evening. Marcus had promised me a special night out. He took me to an elite, exclusive rooftop restaurant overlooking the sparkling city skyline, the kind of breathtaking place that cost a week's salary just for the artisanal appetizers. Sitting across from him, sipping champagne from a crystal flute, I felt like a queen. I felt like I was finally back where I belonged, elevated above the miserable, penny-pinching reality of my home life. But as the waiter approached our candlelit table, my heart didn't just drop, it stopped completely. The man holding the silver tray, dressed in a crisp, stiff waiter's uniform, was Joe. The universe seemed to freeze. The ambient chatter of the restaurant faded into a high-pitched ringing in my ears. A part of me, a tiny buried sliver of my conscience, the sharp, agonizing sting of shame for sitting there with another man. But a louder, crueler, far more defensive part of me felt utter, blinding embarrassment. How could my husband, the man I had vowed to respect, be serving iced water to my wealthy lover? Joe was a consummate professional, even in the face of absolute betrayal. He didn't drop the tray, he didn't scream, he didn't make a scene. He simply took our order with a remarkably steady hand and a cold, flawlessly polite smile, pretending with devastating perfection that we were absolute strangers. I couldn't taste the expensive food. I couldn't hear Marcus's arrogant stories. I was trapped in a nightmare. When I finally got home later that night, the guilt was eating me alive, but I twisted it into self-righteous fury. I stormed down the wooden stairs into the basement, fully prepared for an explosive, world-ending fight. I expected his rage, his tears, his accusations. But his coldness was what truly cut me to the bone. He didn't even look up from the wall. Instead of apologizing for my own betrayal, I doubled down, attacking his vulnerabilities to shield my own sins. I screamed until my throat was raw. I berated him for losing his corporate job, for the humiliating shame of being a lowly waiter at a restaurant where my colleagues dined, for being a pathetic loser who couldn't provide for his wife. I deserve better than this. I deserve a man, not a servant. I yelled at his broad, silent back. He didn't say a single word. He just absorbed the venom, his shoulders perfectly still. Exhausted by my own cruelty, I stormed upstairs and fell into a restless, nightmare-plagued sleep. The next morning, I woke up to a silence that felt different. It wasn't the heavy silence of tension. It was the absolute vacuum of emptiness. I walked downstairs to find the house a hollow shell. Half the furniture was gone. The bookshelves were empty. Joe had meticulously packed up his life and moved out in the dead silence of the night. He left no angry note, no forwarding address, no final footprint. Just an echoing, terrifying emptiness that swallowed me whole. I told myself I was better off. I told myself I was finally free to pursue the luxurious life I deserved with Marcus. But reality didn't truly hit me until exactly a month later, sitting in the sterile, brightly lit HR office at my firm. The HR director, a woman with eyes like chips of ice, slid a manila folder across the table. "We've received credible reports of your inappropriate, undisclosed romantic relationship with Marcus," she said, her voice devoid of any emotion. I was stunned. I tried to defend myself, to claim it was a mutual, loving relationship between two single adults. The director raised a perfectly sculpted eyebrow. "Marcus is married, and his wife is threatening a massive lawsuit against the firm for fostering a toxic workplace." The room spun. Married. I had never once thought to ask. I had been far too busy being showered with expensive gifts and adored to notice the faint telltale tan line of a removed wedding ring on his finger. I was unceremoniously fired on the spot. I was escorted out of the building by security, carrying my belongings in a humiliating cardboard box. Marcus, naturally, was also fired. But the moment the lucrative paycheck stopped and the scandal broke, the charming illusion evaporated. Marcus vanished into thin air. He blocked my number, deleted his social media, and retreated to his wealthy wife to beg for forgiveness, leaving me completely alone to face the towering mountain of credit card bills I had recklessly piled up. In a flash of sickening clarity, I realized that I had secretly paid the balance on nearly all of our expensive dates. I had been buying lavish outfits, covering extravagant tabs when he conveniently forgot his wallet, all desperately trying to prove I was his financial equal, all while my own bank accounts bled dry. Within weeks, I was jobless, practically penniless, facing eviction, and utterly devastatingly alone. I spent my days staring at the ceiling of the empty house, the crushing weight of my arrogant mistakes pressing down on my chest. I had willingly thrown away a flawless, irreplaceable diamond for a flashy, worthless piece of cheap glass that shattered into bloody shards the very moment life got hard. One dreary, overcast afternoon, during a miserable and humiliating grocery run where I was carefully counting pennies to afford generic bread and soup, I saw him. Joe. He was standing near the produce aisle, looking tired but distinctly solid. The sight of him hit me like a physical blow to the stomach. I didn't think. I didn't strategize. I simply dropped my basket, ran out into the parking lot after him, and completely fell apart. We ended up at a nearby park. For 3 agonizing, cathartic hours, sitting on a cold wooden park bench beneath dying autumn trees, I poured my wretched soul out. I wept until I couldn't breathe, begging, pleading, and swearing on my life that the devastating shock of losing everything had finally opened my eyes to the absolute truth. Through my frantic sobbing, I confessed my foolishness, my arrogance, my superficiality, and then he quietly spoke. He revealed the truth that broke me completely. While I was out chasing a pathetic, materialistic fantasy, resenting him for gaming in the basement, he hadn't been wasting time. He had been secretly working grueling double shifts, bussing tables, scrubbing floors, and waiting on wealthy, arrogant people just to scrape together enough cash to keep our house from going into foreclosure. He had swallowed every ounce of his immense pride to protect me from the financial ruin he knew was coming. He had suffered in absolute silence because he knew the truth would stress me out, and I had repaid his ultimate sacrifice with betrayal and contempt. He didn't take me back immediately. He wasn't naive, and he wasn't weak. He agreed very slowly, not to file the divorce papers he had already drawn up, but he demanded total space and strict boundaries. For 3 grueling, humbling months, I became the one waiting. I lived in the shadow of his absence, working a grueling entry-level job just to pay my own way. I visited his tiny, cramped apartment. I cooked the elaborate, loving dinners I used to ignore. I listened to him. I asked about his day. I learned from the ground up how to actually be the supportive, unconditional partner he had always been to me. Slowly, painfully, incredibly, the thick ice between us began to melt. I proved through consistent, quiet actions that the vain, cruel woman who screamed at him in the basement was dead and gone. Eventually, he moved back home. Everything in our lives is fundamentally different now. We possess a level of raw, unfiltered intimacy that we never even approached during our so-called happy years, because now our foundation is built on the stark, honest ruins of our greatest mistakes. There are no secrets, no hidden resentments. We have deep, profound conversations until 3 a.m., discussing our fears, our hopes, our enduring flaws. He recently found a brilliant new role at a massive firm that actually respects his immense talent and compensates him appropriately. And I found a modest, fulfilling job at a local nonprofit that keeps my ego firmly grounded in reality. We are actively planning to try for a child this year. I still wake up sometimes with a heavy, aching heart, staring at the ceiling, utterly unable to forgive the monstrous, shallow woman I once was. But when I turn my head and look at Joe, sleeping peacefully beside me, I don't see a loser or a lowly waiter. I see a titan. I see the only man on earth who possessed a heart strong enough, and a spirit immense enough, to stay when I had gleefully handed him every conceivable reason to walk away forever. The moral of my story is a bitter pill to swallow. Once you start actively looking for reasons to look down on your partner, you will always, inevitably find them, but in doing so, you blind yourself to their true worth. Kudos to Joe. His Prince on a White Horse moment wasn't about being traditionally aggressive or prideful. It wasn't about punishing me. It was about having the miraculous, divine strength to forgive a deeply flawed, broken person who had genuinely and completely repented. He didn't take me back for my money because I had none. He didn't take me back for my status because I was ruined. He took me back simply because he consciously chose to value the sacred bond of our marriage far above his own bruised and battered ego. And for the rest of my days, I will spend every waking breath making sure he never regrets that unimaginable grace.